want to go through it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we start at 10.02 with personnel files. We agreed to the crossing out of district or school site in both locations. We are disagreeing with the addition of no record in personnel file, which is confidential, that whole sentence, and just keep current contract language there as such. And then we're in agreement with the final sentence, the changes of personnel, and then 3 business days. So that's the changes in 10.02. Okay, we're at 10.04. We're in agreement with the strike through on the district will reimburse the employee. Their agreement on expensive watches and cell phones. I would like additional clarification on the exclusion of high fashion clothing and accessories. What are we considering an accessory? Bracelets, necklaces? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there when it was originally written, so I'm assuming that language has been in there for some time. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we're saying here is that if someone brings high fashion clothing and accessories into the school building and it's damaged or lost, like along those lines, that the school district should not have any liability associated with that.
Okay.
So that's the reason it's in there, and it's been in there for a long time.
Okay. Do we, I don't have the one prior to it, but the blue underline was because we had crossed it out and then you want to bring it back? I gotta pull the current contract.
Blue underline.
For the and, yeah. Look right in front of you. I got it right here. Because that's not original language.
Yeah, okay.
That's what you added.
No, I'm saying, I apologize about that.
Want to cross it back out?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Want to cross it back out?
I don't have a problem with adding it and accessories back in there. Quite honestly, but adding it in there. But if you would prefer to, we cross it out. I mean, I don't really, I'm ambivalent about whether or not we include it and accessories.
Okay, well, we'll circle back on it and then we'll get to you. We agreed the cross out of in the event the employee's cars are damaged, so on and so forth. Let me pull up the other one now. However, we would like to keep in the final sentence here that if an employee is a victim of theft and so on, and we can look at additional modifications, but if something is stolen instead of just damage.
You want that back in there?
Yes, we do. Okay.
And I think, we can definitely consider that. And, when we talk about and accessories, I think that what we're looking to do is try to extend that shield of liability associated with items that are being brought to work unnecessarily.
Okay.
Right. So we would prefer, quite honestly, for anything along those lines that are really high value items, that they not be brought into the work environment, thus, exposing the district to liability of one of this thing. Right. So I think that's ultimately why we included in there. Just when you talk about high fashion clothing and other items that would be similar, if we don't have those types of items in the work environment, we are not ultimately at all because broke or stolen or something like that.
Okay. And then so I think that's it for 10.04.
Yeah.
10.05, we would like to keep items 1 and 2 in there in regards to support and assistance. We think that those are reasonable requests, and just itemizing them in there provides that additional help for when there's classroom discipline issues.
Just want to confirm. So it looks like, so this
Did
is
we
like
lose
a
something in
counter
there?
to a counter,
Yes,
the counter to a counter.
yeah, this is the
That
counter to
makes
your
sense at this
counter
point. Yeah,
from July, so I'm looking at your July counter on my computer.
okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was, when you brought up from before,
Okay,
I thought that was the issue, because the 1 and 2 isn't in the current contract.
no,
And so and I think we had blocked it out, so it must have been your original.
1 and 2,
original
correct,
proposal.
yes,
We crossed it out, said no.
and I would like to keep
You're
it.
you'd like to keep it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Sounds like probably something we land on current contract language with, but
And then we're looking at C now. We've agreed to the strikeouts there in regards to the fact that there's just no set class 1, 2, 3, right, currently at school sites. That might be something that we can look at moving forward, but that's where we're on there. 10.06, zero tolerance. It looks like a grammatical change on that first sentence, the policy of zero tolerance, zero tolerance policy with regards on matters, added the with regards on to. Maybe instead of on, it should say to. With regards to, and strike on.
I would agree that it doesn't really read very well as is. So you're proposing that we add with regards?
Yes. With regards to.
With regards to,
Strike the ON.
okay. So what you're proposing isn't necessarily what you've written.
Well, it's overwritten. There's just a grammatical error
Okay,
from the person that wrote it. That one over there.
let me find my pen, so.
It's the
Here it is.
the fundamentals are the same.
Thank you.
It's just a grammatical.
Gotcha.
kind of like and accessories, just kind of snuck its way in there.
If it's grammatical, should be with regard to,
Yeah.
as opposed to with regard to.
We can cross up
We
the
can-
S as well.
We can
We can
counter
cross
that.
off, we can cross the S, that's fine. If that's the
I was-
hold up,
I was thinking, I just wasn't saying.
if that's the hold up here, the S can go.
We'll get it grammatically correct and decide whether or not that's something that we would like to agree with.
Okay. Are we good there on A? Go down to 1. We are agreeing to the strike on 1, 2, 3, but we've added additional language at the end of 1. In regards to this leave will not come from the employee's earned leave, right? So if they're requesting this paid leave, this is potentially like administrative leave. And then if leave is requested, the administration will respond formally as to the yay or nay on that leave.
And also, I'll make a comment that for the next 3, or really at the end of 1, what's in red, the first part, this leave will not come from the employee's earned leave, is actually 4. And then if leave is requested, admin will respond formally, is 5. Instead of putting it at each one, we accidentally left it in 1. It's the same meaning.
So
So the
in
red,
one-
the red is just duplicated is all I'm saying. It exists in 1 and it is also 4 and 5 because it should apply to 1, 2, and 3. So we pulled it out and put it as 4 and
you wanna
5.
Strike it in one?
Yes.
You're saying the formal request is coming outside of Skyward. So, I mean.
Phrase it differently?
Skyward is the system that we use to make the formal, I mean, I would assume it was the platform for the formal request, I was just making sure. Cause you know, the formal request, I send an email. Or,
Yeah.
You know, what's the.
I think so.
Yeah, so if the teacher is not using their earned leave, what would they be putting in Skyward if they're giving like an administrative leave for an incident that they've had? It's still,
It was, yeah, it was whatever it is that we assign. Yeah.
okay, so then, yeah,
Whether it's temporary duty, whether it's some other code that we utilize, it would be a code that we would utilize the system to.
I was making sure we were on the same page.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking.
We think that in the moment
yeah,
is
No,
gonna
no,
be,
eventually.
yeah,
Right,
eventually, correct. So there may be a request in the moment, but it would then formally be through Skyward, but they would verbally request it. Maybe if you got,
Yeah.
as an example, you know, with a trombone in the face a couple of times, you know, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not expecting you to put it in right now.
Right, right.
yeah,
That's
that
what
would,
we wanna make sure.
Yeah. Sure. I'm just saying that's where we were captured.
yeah.
Right.
All right, so 10.06, we've made the adjustments with grammar and additional 4, 5 moving there. Good there? Okay, flip it over. It's 10.07, the last part of B, we've greened all of that. And then we're at 10.08, A1, with the contact list shall be provided to employees. We've added some additional language before the student report the first day of school. When there is a change, notification of such changes shall be provided to employees within 5 business days. And then we've greened with the other strike throughs that were presented last time. Are we good on that one? Or-
No, hold on a second.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. I have no questions on 10.08A1.
Okay, then 10.08B, we just greened the changes there. Just to request an escort. And then the last questions on that one. The last one, 10.09, student records, we greened your changes and we're in agreement with the red strikeouts on the FERPA reference board policy, so on and so forth.
Okay.
That's all fine. That's 10,
All right, we can circle back on that.
okay? All right, the next one is supplement proposal. So this is for the supplements in the chart, not language on hiring.
Okay,
She's coming across the table.
thank you. You're talking about the ability chart
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
We're ready.
Yeah, we're right.
Okay, so the first bullet point here is, we would like to discuss what this would look like, language wise and functionality wise on unspent salary supplements being reassigned to a necessary student facing function, right? We think that when we get into our large categories of supplements, academic coaches and sponsors, student productions, right? These large categories that are then sliced and diced to fit all of our, this is specific to high school. But are there unspent categoricals or function items in there within our salary supplements that are not being used because we have no person at the site doing that? Can that money be folded into one of these categories, reassigned to another teacher that's doing another function? So that way all the dollars that are on the table are spent out. And so I know that they're lined item as such, but what flexibility is there? Okay, and so that's coming from the Excel doc.
What's that?
The Excel doc that Scott Hansen uses to fill out, that's where that's coming from, is like looking at that. We'd like to add a steel drum sponsor, an agriculture sponsor, itemized out, at 12 and 15% respectively. We'd like to add some new elementary school supplements at 4%, PTO coordinator, SAC coordinator, STEM chair, PBIS chair. Rename the site facilitator supplement as a shared decision-making council facilitator. Increase shared decision-making council facilitator from 3 to 6%, and then add shared decision-making council member at 4%. And Mr. Hansen's not here today, but there's a category in salary supplements, academic assistance. And it's on the first page of salary supplements at 17%. What is that being used for at school sites? Academic assistance, because like I don't see it lined item or itemized out on an Excel file.
It says middle school.
No, up at academic assistance, it's the last one right before sale on the first page. On the, this is the 22-25 CBA.
High school academic assistance. We'll have to get with Scott to see if it's a special.
So again, the unspent salary supplements, is that funding that can be used to fill those academic coaches and sponsors to help add to their breakdown of once we start splitting that up?
Yeah, only Hanson can answer that one because he doesn't have one of the numbers next to it. We wouldn't see it. That's what I said. I'm looking at this like.
Are there any on that list that you're looking at right now that are no longer on your Excel
Yeah.
document?
The fact that there's no code associated with that really just sort of, I think that it was probably one of those situations where at some point in time it was in there
Uh-huh.
and it's no longer applicable, but it would really require for Scott. And that's not uncommon in these things because of the way the contract is. If we don't both agree to take it out, it stays in there as current contract language. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's funded.
Okay. Could
But we can definitely look at it.
like if we did a counter, could a counter look at what's you guys are currently itemizing out on an Excel spreadsheet and we could update the chart in here?
Yeah.
That way, right, if there's something that's no longer being funded, but it's just being left in there because current contract language.
Well, I think if we can agree to clean it up, we can take it out. You know what I mean? But in the past, if it wasn't a priority for either side to clean it up, then it probably just got left there. And what, I think Mr. Burgess makes a good point. If there's no code,
Mhm.
then that tells me that we're not, if there's no code in the spreadsheet, right, then there's not a code that we're utilizing to pay it. Right, so it's probably not in use.
Yeah, so I think that you all know that, but then
Right.
people reading the contract don't,
No,
so therefore,
no,
right,
So therefore, we're looking at it going,
Absolutely.
wow, look, 5,700 that could be spent
Oh, yeah.
and it's not being spent. So that's where we're coming from there. And then if you look at that list, Mr. Burgess, do you see any on the itemized list that are not in function anymore?
Academic assistance.
Sales got some different ones.
The only one I see that would not be.
Okay. Do you know what it would cost to raise the supplement base to the current base?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can definitely, I can
Because-
cost that.
We could cost it, we could figure it out. Because
It'd
right
be
now,
quite a
we're-
significant jump from 33,550 to 47,500.
okay, is there an appetite on the district's end to raise the supplement?
That's a significant jump. I think we definitely have to cost it out to determine whether or not that's something that we could do.
Okay,
I think obviously that was the original intention with the way that it was set up,
Mhm.
was that the supplement base would mirror what
Yeah.
our actual base is, but I think we've departed from that some time ago.
yes,
But, if that's something that you guys are interested in, it's definitely something that we could have conversations at the district leadership level to discuss and determine if it's something that's feasible.
okay.
I think we'll
So then-
start with our budget. Make sure it's all right.
You need to price it.
Right, right.
I had a question about when you budget this, is it refined to all these details or is it just like a supplement budget or?
Full amount is the cost of district, we get all those percentages.
Yeah.
and fund it in every school.
Well, I'm asking like we asked Joe what positions aren't around, but I would say it'd probably be better to ask budget what positions aren't funded. Right, because they would have to fund those positions. And so I feel like the budgetary side might reveal very quickly, unless it's just like you said, you add up the pool of money, that's what's budgeted, then we wouldn't have that information.
Right.
But if each thing is line item, then we would, so I don't know.
And whether or not they have those individual. Yeah. But,
So was that like a pot of money in a school basis kind of thing for all the supplements?
so what she's saying is that we fund these supplements. And the school then, basically site-based decision looks at what do they have,
Mhm.
Right,
and they spend what they can within the parameters of the spreadsheet. So for instance, if Rickards doesn't have a lacrosse coach, well, then they obviously don't have the lacrosse coach to spend money on, right? So
Right.
we have not in the past allowed them to then take that money and redistribute it and give it to, football coaches or something along those lines.
okay,
That would be a departure from what our past practice has been. However, but like, for instance, if with regard to the one that you mentioned before, the fact that we don't have a code to pay it on the spreadsheet here tells me that it just hasn't been utilized. That's an anecdotal type of,
Mhm.
illustration, but I think that if I looked into it a little bit deeper, that's what we would find. But I could be wrong, right? So what we'll do is dig into these a little bit more and do, like you said, go through and say, okay, are we still utilizing this? And is there an appetite for us to be able to, spread it around, and under what parameters would we be willing to allow for it to be spread around? Because we would not want it to be, for instance, if you're not using it over here, basically used to offset as needed, right? I think that there would need to be
Mhm.
defined parameters for how any sort of overflow would be.
Mhm. Okay, so that would be our, a discussion that would have to happen around that. That's not as clear as adding steel drum sponsor.
and my only
I think
question
that there was a
was,
couple of things, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
So I think there was also a couple of other items that we needed to get added as well, like bowling. There was a couple of sports that were new additions. That,
Bowling.
I didn't know. I don't remember the others.
Oh, is
Middle school baseball. things
that,
like
and then there
but
was, esports,
esports.
esports. Um,
So those would be things that we would add to, we'll add those into a counter.
Okay.
That relates back to the, to the spreadsheet.
So on an Excel spreadsheet that we have, I think for Mr. Hanson at one point, some of the schools, like the number at the bottom, let's say it's 200,000, and then their totaled supplements might be 150,000. So it looks like, which is probably not totally accurate, might have just been when the time was pulled, there's 50,000 unspent dollars there. In your history, that's probably not the case for supplement.
I would have to see the spreadsheet. I'm not sure.
Okay, I feel like that might have been pulled like a halfway point when fall or spring sports hadn't been itemized out yet, right? Because then it looks like there's leftover money. Can that leftover money be used to then increase the base, or is there been money that's been left out to do that? That's kind of where we're coming from on some of those things.
And so I just had a small question, which would be like, once at a school, when the supplemented position is not really happening anymore, like this academic assistant supplement, at what point does the budget part follow? Because in 1 year, you wouldn't defund that, right? But 2 years, 3 years, at some point, you're like, you remove the code, right? You say this is position no longer.
I'd have to find historical because
Yeah,
I was like, this is good, Joe. You've been a principal how long at Charles now? 12.
Well,
I don't ever remember academic assistant being on there. So we'd have to historically go back.
yeah, that was one of the first ones we were talking about.
Mhm.
What?
And she was a bookkeeper in high school
Right.
20 years ago. And I don't remember when academic assistant was ever on there.
Yeah.
I think this is really just a list of codes that could be used.
Yeah.
That somehow, got into the contract at some point in time. Now, what it actually looks like at Childs or at Leon or at Rickards or any other school really does boil down to, I don't know that it bears it.
right.
It boils down to what they actually have.
And I also just want to add real quick, so, I mean, I do see the needs at certain schools, but like, if you do field drum in agriculture, that's gonna happen at some schools. You're gonna have the same issue occur at some schools, right? If they don't have the program, you do this money out, and everybody's not gonna have that.
You can still can. Or
So to that point, though,
But we'll take the unit.
yeah.
Right.
It's spreading around, right?
but I think to your point, Principal Burgess, if a supplement is not utilized and there is a function by which we can put it back into funds that support student-facing activities, then that just gives additional dollars to the programs that you do have at your school to recognize people for the work that they're doing. And I think that's the idea behind those.
We recognize that, and I think that the main thing that we would want to make sure is that we maintain the consistency, of the percentages as they're allotted, right? So we would not agree with the, so if Mr. Burgess was to receive a unit for steel drum and for agriculture, a supplemental unit, right? That he then is able to change all of his folks from a 4% to a 5%, because I think once again, that's sort of disrupting the consistency across the board.
There's one element in the sports that, we need to kind of keep our eyes on, and that is Title IX. Because let me give you a scenario, right? So let's say, you've got low, let's just use, girls wrestling. Okay, so let's say we had a supplement set aside. You also have to be careful from saying, oh, I couldn't find anybody, so now I'm going to try to disband that sport. Right, and now I'm taking opportunities away from kids, because by the way, I can take this supplement and give it to another let's say more popular sport, right? So Title IX actually keeps us in check, because we have to make sure, are we giving, I mean, and that's why OCR jumps all over us if we don't do that. Like, you have to be careful, but, maybe, there will be other situations that we can look at, as long as we're not messing with that particular feature, because a parent actually could come in and say, well, you took monies that would have gone to my child in their sport, and maybe the progression, the promotion of that sport, and gave it to someone else. Well, that makes sense.
Well, I think
Makes sense.
in any event, I think we would look at, we've got to be very careful at the way that we're allotting that out, and be mindful when if we do decide that it would be appropriate to reallocate, how we do that, how we allocate.
And I think that's a great idea, because that's the issue of the Shared Decision-Making Council for transparency at the site, so more people are involved and understanding what the limitations are the objectives and how the monies were spent.
I think part of the solution here is when you look at the current contract and you're looking at 2E, where it talks about all high school supplements shall be divided into the following 6 categories, and then you've got director, coach, assistant, and then we got sponsor there at the end at 4%. And then you look at the categorical for academic coaches and sponsors, right, that $15,000. And that starts getting divided up, that some people are earning less than the 4%, maybe they're earning the 1% minimum to get there, that unspent funds could go to make up the difference from the 1% up to the 4% that a sponsors, as itemized out earlier in the contract, they get the difference made up at some point. It still keeps a parameter around it, ties it to something. I mean, and that could go towards, the other thing is, the minor activity assistant, if they're.
That's sort of consistent with what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
In terms of being mindful of the way that we're going about.
Right, these are already
redistributing funds.
happening, right? Key club's already happening, so on, that doesn't have an exact line item down in there, but let's bring them
What
up
you also
to.
have to keep in mind, just like we talked about before with lapse funding, is that that's sort of already, it's already baked in to some degree with the amount that is provided, right? That there is an expectation to some degree that there's gonna be some of these that are not funded at every single school. Right, so it's not like they look at it from a budget perspective and say, okay, we expect that all of our positions are going to be funded every single year, and we fund our programs to that limit, because that's not realistic. You have to already bake in the fact that you're gonna have some lapse, right, in the budgeting process. So I think that may be a misconception when you guys think about the amount of money that we do have, is that, that we fully fund every single position every single year. We don't, because that's not realistic. That's not, it's not realistic that all positions would actually be filled.
Yeah.
And we've had that conversation previous.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume you budget the first year for everything, and then as you see some constant vacancy rate, you would adjust your budget down, right? So that you don't provide way too much money and spend way little and have all that excess, right?
So that's supplements.
Okay.
For right now, right? I think we need to look at that chart a little better.
I think that supplements is gonna be sort of an ongoing conversation, because there's various parts. I need to talk with my team. I may have a counter to your last proposal related to supplements.
The hiring process.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we can discuss that. I'm not sure 100%.
Okay, so this final thing here is our discussion on salary. It's not a counter proposal at this point in time.
You'll say good, because they better make a lot of sense.
It's your numbers.
We want 300 million.
I'm just saying, it's a bunch of numbers.
333 million, if you look at the bottom.
All right, so what do you, ground me in the numbers, what am I looking at?
So what you're looking at is your entire budget, and the top chart there, I'm looking at all the numbers labeled number 1, the entire budget here categorized out into your funding strips, the categories that it's put in, and then the total appropriations from your budget of 333 million. All of that can be found here in that top category. So we've been talking about our salary proposal, which comes in higher than yours by about $3.7 million, right? You're at just around 3.8. We wanted 7.5. And so we've been talking about find the funding. And when we all met and we had our productive conversation regards to the different categoricals and how they broke down, we did a deeper dive into that. And now looking at the second chart, we talk about material supplies, and we discussed that if there's a large pool of money going into materials and supplies that's then maybe spent out throughout the year, maybe it's not, maybe that's what's being pushed over into our general fund at the end of every year, is taking the materials and supplies category specific to the instructional function to capture our unit here, bringing it from the 26 million down to the 22, almost 23 million, moving $4 million from there, just for even numbers sake, into the salaries category and upping that by 4 million to cover the difference in the salary proposal from your end to our end. And then if we shift strictly in the instructional category, while it does move your end total appropriations over by 4 million and under by 4 million respectively, your total appropriations and instruction all the way through the end do not change because it's merely shifting within each instructional category. We see how we got that? Okay, and then if we flip it to the back, so we flip it to the back, we did a history on the materials and supplies budget, ranging from 2017, 2018 school year, all the way to this current school year, and what we, what the district allocates to that line item there, 21 million, all the way up to 27 million essentially, and you can see the respective years. And then what the actual expenditures are of that category of money at the end of the year. So right, what's reported at your AFR. And so approximately an average of 4.8 million throughout the time has been spent, but our average budget in that category is 23.7 million. So it's been over budgeted, which is appropriate, right? Given that, you know, an ideal budget is over budgeted, underspent, which I think is you all are doing very well, but this one's very much over budgeted is what it comes across as. And so by shifting 4 million from your materials and supplies budget over to your salaries budget, you're not shorting that category a significant amount in which you still couldn't cover a significant larger increase in materials and supplies this current school year, right? Your highest year is 8.8 million. Even if you shifted 4 million, you're still at that 22.9 million for 23-24. You could go wild and spend all 22 million of it this year and still be good. Still be good. So that would be your materials and supplies. That's where we're coming up with that overage, right? A historical tracking of it. And then the last slide here, slide 4, talks about the historical of assigned and unassigned. So this does not account for your 3% required and then the 5 million that you guys have set aside as an additional restricted fund. So this accounts for just assigned and unassigned. Again, this comes from your AFR and initial budgeting report, your DSB. And so throughout the history, right, our fund balance has consistently increased, under budgeted, and then at the end of the year, over allocated, right? If you budgeting 11.5 million for 22-23, you actually ended up with the 49 million and change. And so, I mean, it just goes to show that you all have done a really good job at figuring out your budget, that you're having leftover money. But can we utilize some of that additional monies, considering we've seen a general increase in this over a period of years, to the additional teacher salaries requested? And then we have a state comparison here where the state average for 21-22, we don't have the full data yet for 22-23 yet, is 11%, and you guys are hovering around the 17%. That's all monies included, assigned, unassigned, restricted, the additional allocation of 5 million. And so the percent above the statutory requirement is somewhere around 40 million or so. So when we talk about, is there money for potentially the difference in the salary increase, we think that that would be the easiest shift in the instructional category from this first page to materials and supplies over to salaries, which hopefully would be less categorical redistribution overall.
So I mean, this is basically the same argument that you know you've had in years past, and we've responded to repeatedly. And so I honestly, I think that we'll just have to take this. Thank you. Yes.
I'm not sure if it's the same argument, other than the fact that in the past it was said that the fund balance didn't allow for it. That the fund balance accounted for the 5 million, the 3%, and a couple other things. And that there were no additional monies other than those fund balance dollars. And so, although we've discussed it in the past, we're trying to separate the two things. So.
Well, yeah, I think that we're not saying that there's absolutely no money. What we're saying is that we've got prioritized, you know, items that, you know, the superintendent and the board want to be able to fund for future years, that if we continue down this path, if we go and spend that money, we're not gonna be able to do it. You know, part of that is that, we talked about the fact that the ESSER funds are going away. Talked about the fact that we have, 25 or 30, guidance counselors and social workers that we need to be able to add back into the staffing plans. Once those ESSER funds go away. And I think that, as it relates, it really is, it boils down to, a determination of what is appropriate budget. And we can continue to talk through it and, look at your numbers and see if there's any room for us to come back. But I think that as you look at it, you have to consider that anything that we do, if we were to find an additional $4 million, that's an additional $4 million this year, next year, year after that, year after that, year after that. And that money goes away pretty quick.
And if you look at the pattern, it precedes ESSER and COVID. So the money historically is there. That's our argument.
Yeah, I understand your arguments. Do you want, we take a caucus?
Perfect.
To be able to just have a little chat. talk
Yes.
through Whether or not we have any further response on this issue, and then also whether or not, we have any, responses to the items. that you brought.
That's fine. Excellent. Thank you.
our LCS counter proposal related to appendix B on college supplement. I think this is an ongoing work in progress, so we talked a little bit more about updating the matrix. You guys did a counter proposal back in August. And so what we've done here is just list sort of our response. So I guess it's a counter to a counter. And so, you know, as we go through there, I think we're getting closer. I think there's some aspects of the language that either we'll have to agree, disagree, go with current contract language, or just say, hey, okay, we're gonna both compromise and agree on language, right? So the first one here is in and this be 1A. You guys have included that on performance review, we may be briefly at discretion of something. What we're saying is that a formal performance review would be much too burdensome. Would cause way, essentially, you would quadruple the number of performance reviews that a principal has to do. And so that's not something that we can agree to. We can't, I mean, I think but an informal, I think happens in every instance, right? That the principal in their thought process, they're having a conversation around, okay, how did the season go? And they're making a determination as to whether or not that person's going to be active, right? And so we cannot agree to a formal review, but I think we can agree that there will be some form of informal review that takes place. Now, granted, there's not recourse there, right? So at the end of the day, that's not something that, because it's an informal review, can take many different forms. There's not something that's agreeable action. But I think that we can agree that kind of situation, that the review and conversation, I think needs that, right? Even if it's not on paper, sitting down and it could be that I pull the coach aside, hey, good job this year. I appreciate what you did, and you're giving some feedback, right? But it's not formalized. Otherwise, we probably just need to stick with the same. We are willing to accept, however, if the supplement, individual we had to change just cause. You guys put, however, if the supplemented individual is removed without just cause, the position supplement will be paid out in full. What we said is, if the supplemented individual is removed without reason, the position supplement will be paid in full. Lower standard than just on. Okay, and I mean, we're not going to agree with just on sort of that right to a supplement. We disagree with all supplemented only conditions will be considered vacant at the end of the school year, which is not something that we agree with at this point. We all that green language is there. The next one is what was said, B, if a grievance is filed, which contests something position of appointment and grievance is sustained that grievance shall be paid. Regardless of and so that's another. What I would say is, in any instance where we go through agreements and there is a sustained action, I think we determine what the outcome is based on the circumstances that are involved. And so I don't want to tie our hands and say that in every event, no matter how minor the violation, that it results in the full payment of something. That it may be inappropriate, right? I think that we would like to maintain the flexibility of, in instances where there is a, a sustained violation, that there's a recourse is based upon circumstances of the situation. And that allows us to better deal with individual grievances. Um. We agreed, to the language where you guys have asked them that, where it says for supplemental positions filled after this date, this is in, 1B2. Right, for supplemental positions filled after this date, site administrator will make every effort to update the LCTA bulletin board and shall email the list to their instructional staff to run the problem. Three is acceptable. Four, I think four, we flip flop. I think you did that earlier too. So, we flip flop here. We really want the language that says, in this one, however, nothing in these procedures should be misconstrued for the site administrator's discretion of the most to can select. This is something that I'm just reiterating. It is advocates' right to make the determination as to this, right? And it's something that the well, selection. So accordingly, we're also not willing to say everybody shall be done. First hire the first hire instructional staff, because in instances where they're not the best candidate for the position, you didn't want to. She's there.
Can you pause for just a second to pull current contract language to see where we're off on 4?
Really, the primary changes before we're just flip flopping the last two.
We're pulling current contract and seeing what the current thing said and how much we've added since then, and then what we've agreed. We've been green and ungreened, and okay, we're good.
Then we go to C, and we're willing to accept the language that you propose. That shall be made by CPA. Okay. Then we move.
We missed one. 4, 3, qualified applicants outside the school. We're agreeing to crossing out district.
The same at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same as the old one, but we're all.
No, I mean, it's the same in either way, because in C, you seek stuff outside of the school.
Outside of the school and outside of the district.
Continue.
So this is just cleanup. It wasn't related to the other,
Okay.
but it's just cleanup because I think there was some discussion related to something based. Last year, something based to 33,550, and we put a little asterisk down there saying, hey, but the current language says increase. Some of the base will be increased for the 2017-2018 school year. It's because it's a water under the bridge. I mean, there's no reason to keep that. And what we're saying is supplement base will be 33,550, which is what's here. And then if we ultimately decide, through negotiations to change it, it'll be whatever the supplement base is, right? And that just cleans up the language for them. We related to the number of supplements under 3A. You guys have proposed a sentence that said if a person has 3 supplements and apply for additional, the next person in line shall receive the supplement. We do not agree with that.
So don't think, three, but that line that you just read was a formal proposal. We'd only formally proposed the first page the last time,
Oh, okay, so I was,
because it was in purple. So it was like
that was just something you.
a surprise for later. Yeah, it was John's notes out.
Well, now.
Yeah, but I mean.
Yeah.
In any event, so we work.
Okay, you're proposing to cross off. Okay, got it.
And this, like, maybe this should be, right, so, this is just an opportunity to clean up language. That
Okay.
would be consistent with how we operate. Right? There's been some conversation back and forth with Scott and I lately regarding this issue. But, high school athletic director, the intent was never to say athletic director not receive any supplements. The intent of the negotiation was that athletic director would receive only the athletic director stuff. That there is an athletic director supplement that all athletic directors receive. But that's supposed to be the only supplement they receive. So like if they were forced into coaching another sport or something along those lines, that you didn't have the athletic director getting multiple supplements to coaching sports, which is also getting athletic director supplements, right? So what we're doing is trying to clarify the language, the actual practice, which is athletic director will be employed on a 12-month basis. That's all in document, which, the new language is high school athletic directors will receive the athletic director supplement, but shall not receive compensation for additional athletic supplements. Okay. Now, there's some question whether or not that's fair 100% without any kind of exception. But that sort of discussion is going on. We're going to circle back with something that but unless in certain situations where there is no other coach available, and that player has to assume that maybe there's a little bit of something we can do to compensate them for that time that they have to stay coaches. But we're not.
Perfect.
And that's it.
Okay.
We obviously know that this is a work in progress. We plan to bring back, like we talked about before, a little bit of a modification to basics in the back.
Oh, yeah.
What we call spreadsheet.
Yeah.
As we discussed it, I think it becomes complicated, really complicated to figure out the distribution of unused funds. You know what I mean? Because in some sense, you got to control budget, right? In some schools, just by the nature of some schools, Leon's focused on the arts. They're likely to have a steel drum, other types, arts classes that they don't have courses and things like that. On the whole, we're adding additional supplements that boost that number up, really, and it has to be fair across the board. What it does is really have the effect of boosting our budget, right? And so what we need to figure out a way to do is to assign these portions.
Can we get a spreadsheet from Mr. Hanson for like an end of the year, all PAFs have been filed, everything's been filed, and so if the initial budget for all line items in that Excel doc was 200,000, and then after every PAF was filed and we're closing out the books for that year, the school site only spent this or 200,000 and then some because we supplemented it with booster money, like. Is there a document out there that
I don't
is,
think a document is just like that.
okay,
We track it by project code. and I believe in that site, but don't hold me on that. So, I mean, I could run numbers based on the project, but I want to be approved to PAS and such. I don't know.
But it probably wouldn't include the boosted funds and all that.
No, but like right, like on the Excel spreadsheet, there's 10 assistant football coaches listed. If all 10 aren't filled, but those items have already been budgeted for. Hypothetically, at that point, would we be then under the 200,000, or whatever the number is, right, but under the 200,000 because we didn't fill 5 assistant football coaching positions?
Well, I think, no,
Is that-
because I think what ended up happening, like you said, so another area that we may be bringing back information on, it goes to supplement amounts to the. And it says sponsors, Ms. Burks and I were talking about this just right out the door when we were coming in. You know, the current contract language says 4%, but the reality of that is that really it's a range. You know what I mean? It's a range based upon what's available. And so I think what ends up happening in the current situation is that they spend what money they have available. Spend what money you have available, and it goes to those sponsors, and so those individuals that are taking the sponsorship, they're not all budgeted for,
No,
right? That's something we want to do, where we have money that's up there, we're saying cost it doesn't get billed. That may be the money. Right, so that's what we have to figure out. How do we object it?
yeah,
Right? And then there's a lot of good things. So that's the challenge.
yeah, and so if we had a spreadsheet that showed that there were no lacrosse coaches at this school, but this school had lacrosse, but didn't have 6 football coaches, or assistant football coaches, but then this school didn't have tennis, right? And so it's gonna vary from school site to school site. But would there be a historical tracking of at least maybe the last year, like 22, 23, of where we ended up there? Okay. Cause I think I have an incomplete spreadsheet from at the halfway point for when we started our work weeks in January, which obviously things took place after that point. So if I don't have a filled one.
I think that whether or not it exists in the current environment, I can't say for sure, right? Some of it is just so, you know, if you don't have it in team, the expectation is that it will be. It's not line item.
Yeah.
Area there.
Okay.
Just why. Last Sunday, last position, that's not. You know, black and white. It's there.
If I may, I was just looking at, one, B for, so if you look at A through D, all of them have qualified in there. So wouldn't that kind of render the new language, however, nothing in the procedure should misconstrue to limit the site mistakes expression? Wouldn't that render that redundant, qualified for next? You mentioned that, you know, we shouldn't tie our hands and have, unqualified or, you know, people that have less experience than someone who would be lower on that ranking. If qualified is in there, the implication is that would be a necessary. You know?
I think that the distinction would be that principal is making determinations to post. If we were to rest simply at qualified, and someone that's very minimally qualified, you know, may be enforced upon us by contract to that kind of situation. Kids are getting the best possible, sponsorship, and that's the term. I think that's done by our principals for making those decisions as to who's the most qualified. So with regard to your, we appreciate information. We're going to do a little bit deeper dive into what exactly, if there's any distinctions beyond, you know, the sort of surface understanding.
Because I think the way we left it, on our internal was the idea that if the money and materials and supplies would be placed there, then redistributed throughout the year. Was there a tracking of that redistribution? Like, right, like, I think I posed that question. We didn't have an answer for it right then, but if we were to continue down the path, that would be still a question that we had, is that if we're
I'll
budgeting.
respond right now is that we. as a board,
Mhm. Mhm.
We're going to take into consideration.
Yeah.
I also think that there has to be an understanding that, you know, any kind of further. Funds is something that. It's a recurring expense.
Mhm.
So, it's not just $1 million this year, it's $4 million.
It's an investment. It's not a recurring expense.
I just want to say, well, it's a recurring expense, they're the recurring, budgeting situation, so we agree and find there to be recurring excess funds, so we hear you.
Is there some time certain that we can get those answers? So we're not just like, is there an estimated time from like our smaller meeting? Can we have answers by Friday? What's,
Whether or not we're equal.
no, there were questions that were asked during the meeting that were budgetary about details and within categoricals.
We need afterwards. Variably, what questions you're looking for that answer, but I don't know that. I didn't come away with that, with a list of to do.
Billy may have the list because he said he was going to look into it. So
So
check with
if
him.
If we can just give it up, what were the specifics?
I mean, we can go over those, but then eventually are we going to be here 3 months later having the same conversations? When we gonna land this plane, when we gonna find out the answers, I guess is what we're all trying to figure out.
I think what you're saying. We've got it all.
But in order for the priorities to change, it won't be with anyone on this side of the table. It's with the 6 people that sit at the dais, right?
Think that school board have advised them since the. We stand right now.
So
What I would also argue is that if we talk about funding. No fault of the board. One big mistake that took place and evaluation of property. Ultimately led to the school board being issued with more than $1 million. They had come up with a way then straight to account for them.
and you have a process with the 5 million in your emergency
We do.
account.
That's part of the reason why we've got.
Yeah, but that's not
And
part of the
that-
monies we're talking about.
Yeah. So those kinds of things do happen. And we have to be able to cover.
So I would say to that example, when Wakulla does not come to the table wanting to increase their fund balance to withhold extra money for these things, after it has already happened, I will be here explaining that to you all, that they did not encumber additional monies for that. it just kept rolling, because a lot of districts do that. And that's kind of one of our complaints is that, you know, how much should be saved, which it's philosophical differences, spending taxpayer money versus saving it to make sure you can do things in emergencies. So we just disagree on that number.
I think yes, agree that our priorities are maybe a little bit different. I think our priorities are not misplaced. The priorities that we have are just to ensure that everyone's got a job when, you know, when dire times hit. And we're able to be paid.
So I have two questions regarding to salary. One is when you determine the salary for the instructional category alone, is it an average number and it's like the average numbers, the average salary is 50,000, we just multiply that out by the number of people. Okay, and then is it a safe number based on like simple math, simpleton math here? I took the total salaries on the DSB and divided it by 12 months to get just under 15 million would be what you would have to have in a month reserve for salary. I mean, that's just like really basic math, not considering benefits.
Or you're only looking at the 5100 function.
No, I'm looking at the entire salary appropriation, right? Rough 15 million, 15 to 17, okay. And then so when you take those average instructional salary numbers for the instruction function only, and you multiply that out, historically, it looks like the DSBs have been over budgeted by a few million, and then ending up on the AFR coming in under, right, coming in under, so therefore, would there be a safe assessment to guess that the salary number right now might be over budgeted and that there might be room?
No, it's to
Rolling basis, okay. Okay. Gotcha, okay, that's focus. Yeah. Right. So
Unless
that's-
you have anything else?
No, that,
Well, right, I think that it would be, obviously, we want to be at a place where we can. In terms of.
alrighty. Thank you.
I guess power.